think it's obvious to say one of the main draws to Formula One for a lot of people is the evolution of technology along the way. To see a car year after year develop little bits and get a little bit quicker, or especially comparing cars from today to 5 or 10 years ago and seeing that evolution as the rules change and as new ideas are developed, is one of the most interesting things about Formula One racing and always keeps it on the cutting edge. The idea of developing a car and a team is something that's been a strong focus in some of the newer Formula One sims from Codemasters. You're putting points in different skill trees and your car is developing along the way and getting quicker, but those changes are not extremely obvious, at least visually. You can certainly feel them when you're driving, but there was a time when the development of Formula One cars was extremely obvious to the naked eye. From the late 60s through the 80s, it seems like cars were changing almost every race, with new aero bits being stuck on them and chassis being reshaped and whole new cars being unveiled. And you can go back and play some of the older mods and things to try to experience cars from a specific season, but that sense of technology progressing hasn't been as much a focus as I think it could be. So I want to show off today another beautiful rFactor2 mod that does something I don't think I've ever seen in another mod, or certainly not this exact idea. This mod's called the 70s F1 mod, and it's made by ChiefWiggum. I just took a look at another ChiefWiggum mod, the 1985 kart mod, and he has a 1975 F1 mod as well, and ChiefWiggum has a few of these mods. The 85 kart mod, the 75 F1 mod, those are set out to faithfully recreate a series of cars that actually raced and be as accurate as possible to those different variants. There's lots of mods out there that try to do that. This one, the 70s F1 mod, is quite a bit different, and I have to thank Chris L as well, who responded to the 85 kart mod, just reminding me that this one existed. I had seen this out there and I never tried it, but I thought it sounded really interesting, and absolutely it is very interesting. However, this is a beta. It's an alpha or beta version of this whole mod, and I'm not entirely sure what's actually included, and we'll get into more of what I mean in a second. I went through and read actually the full 39 some odd page forum thread about this mod, and there's just not a lot of information about exactly what's going on with the mod, but it's just too awesome. Although I don't usually share stuff that's in a beta form, this is just too good. So I want to take a look at some of the more obvious stuff the mod includes. Firstly, there's 3 sets of pre-built cars, and you'll get why I'm saying pre-built in a second. There's the 70s middle group, which I'm looking at here. There's a 70s early group, and then there's also a 70s six-wheeler group, a totally different category there. This mod overall covers F1 cars roughly from 1970 through, I think, about 1977. If we jump, for example, into the 70s middle group, take a look here. You have this beautiful Brabham, as well as the Ferrari 312s here that were raced throughout the 70s, different versions, different airboxes on them, McLaren as well, Lotus. So these are all different cars from the middle part of the 70s, I guess 73 through 76. I think this is the 76 version, 77 version, there we go, James Hunt's car. So you can go through and pick these different cars. I will say the physics in this are absolutely awesome, and we'll take a look at that in a second, but lots of different variants and things to choose from here. And this is the early set of cars. So you have things like this, I think 1969 or so with the high wings. McLaren, we've got a Ferrari 312 from the same era. We've come over, we got Francois Sever's 72 Tyrrell, and move on from there. You might be noticing that these don't look, especially if you're looking at the nose here, this Matra, maybe they don't look 100% authentic. And there's a very good reason for that. So if I jump out, we also have the six-wheeler category. I'll jump in real quick because I know folks would want to see that. Of course, I have the Tyrrell six-wheeler from 1976. Now, all these cars, you can drive all of them individually. Very fun to drive. The handling in this is awesome, and we'll look at that in a second. However, these are not the main attraction, in my opinion, to this whole mod set. We have here what's called the custom car, and this, in my opinion, is the highlight of the whole mod. And I've pulled up the custom car in the showroom in rFactor2 because this is where all the cool stuff happens, I think. So we're taking a look at the car. Pretty cool looking formula car, very square chassis, body here in the front, but open in the back. It looks somewhat like a car from the 60s, although the radiators on the back aren't entirely spec of that era, and certainly having the square chassis isn't, but pretty bare bones car here. But if you're familiar with the rFactor2 showroom, you might have noticed all these different customization options down the left side, and this is where this gets really cool. This is basically like Lego for cars, or build your own Formula One car. We'll take a look at the nose here to start. We have the classic no wing, just cigar shape, even though it's not round the whole way, but we have front wing configurations, and I can click on this list and I've got so many options to choose from for different wings. I guess we'll go with the P34 wing to start, just to see it there we go, the nice P34 front wing, basically bar of soap off the front of the car. We'll take a look at the back of the car, rear wing configurations. We got a whole bunch of these as well. We'll go with the 312T style. Ooh, big huge wing off the back there, and so just like this, just like Lego, we can build our own 1970s Formula One car. Now, there's some other stuff out there that does things like this. I know Automation is a game that's really popular right now to build your own cars. Tons of options in there. You can make anything from a very realistic car to kind of an outrageous car, engines and all the specs. And then I think those can be ported over to BeamNG and raced in there. And although BeamNG, I have to give it credit for a lot of updates recently to make that a much more accurate driving type game, I think it's fair to say rFactor2 is still very much one of the best, if not the best, handling sims out there on the market. And so to have something like this where you can build your own Formula One car and then go test it out and visually see it, but then have it also make physics changes is such a cool idea, and especially when it hits an era of racing that I like so much. So most of the changes here are aero related. We have the front and rear wings, like I said. We can also do side pods. It's not as many options here, but definitely enough. We can go with some rounded ones there. That actually looks quite nice. A little bit of a bulge off the side. We can do different mirror changes, air boxes, of course. This is where the 70s gets really fun. We'll go with that's just kind of a hump in the back there. Maybe something a little more huge. There we go. Put the 312T on there so we can add an airbox. Now you can see from what we started with to now, very much a different looking car, but it is mostly aero changes, although there are a couple non-aero options. So we do have engine type, and right now there's two engines included with this. We have a Cosworth V8 and a Ferrari V12. But if we actually take a look in the back, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the video. Try to get a good angle here. Controls are a little weird in the showroom. It does say Cosworth on the engine. I'll get rid of the huge airbox here for just a second, but we do have a Cosworth V8. You can tell by how many pipes it has there. So I can change this to a Ferrari V12. Totally different engine. Right now they sound the same. Unfortunately, it sounds more like a V8. So I'll stick with the V8 for now. Not sure if they actually control differently at this point, the two engines. And this is a big gray area for me with this whole mod, and I'm sure it will be cleared up as soon as I post this, but do the cars actually handle differently? The capability is there. I have never seen a mod extensively use these kind of options this much. Usually, if you're familiar with rFactor2 mods, you'll come in here, especially with rFactor1 stuff, there would have been a few settings to change your force feedback or, have a couple different small options. Maybe in some of the more detailed Formula One mods, be able to select race variants of cars. And I know there can be physics changes with that, but the question for me is, do all these things make a difference? I've done some testing and I feel like there is a difference between no wings and some wings, but in this video I actually want to try this out. I want to try to take this car to a circuit with a few different variants and see if the lap times change at all, and generally just give the impressions of driving, because it is a very fun car to drive. But maybe to start we'll actually go with no wings at all, and we'll try it totally bare like we started here. We'll get rid of our airbox, small mirrors, helmets. We do have a few tire options. Unsure as well if these make changes, but really just graphic logos on the sides. But we'll stick with old Goodyear for now. We'll get rid of our rear wing. So we've got pretty much the bone stock car. I'll say for car body, there's only two in here right now. There's this square one that we've been looking at, and there's also a high version which just raises the tub, a little less visibility. So we'll stick on the flat version of that. We'll get rid of our side pods here as well. So this is pretty much as slimmed down as you can go. So we'll start with this really stripped down version of the car and go to a circuit, do some lap times, see what it can do, and then come back in here, make some fun aero changes and see what that does to it. And for a circuit to test our custom F1 car, I thought I'd take it to Zandvoort. This is Sergio Loro or F3 Classic Tracks Zandvoort circuit. And this is a track I've actually raced on. I did a video in Assetto Corsa with some 60s F1 cars around it. But it's a track Sergio made for both Assetto Corsa and for rFactor2. And in my opinion, this is one of the nicest tracks, especially for classic tracks that I've raced so far in rFactor2. And Zandvoort, in my eyes, is one of the best 60s F1 tracks. This circuit itself, the layout is accurate from about 1948 when the circuit was first built through 72, I think, before they started making some changes to it. This version itself here is absolutely based on the 1967 race itself, but his pack also contains a 65 version, and I believe in Assetto Corsa there might actually be a third version of it, but absolutely a track to pick up, just $5, and it's a beauty to race on. So we're rolling out onto the track in our wingless, bare bones custom F1 car, and we'll come up to Tarzan. Gonna get the tires up to temperature, but I thought I'd quickly just talk about the general driving with this mod before we really get going to doing some times. rFactor2 continues to impress me. I guess what they say on the tin is accurate, and it's a very awesome handling sim. And these cars, this mod specifically, really brings out, I think, some of the best in it. You can just feel the tires so well. They're actually talking to you, it feels like, in this sim, where instead of you chasing them, you can kind of get them to do what you want, as long as you don't overstep boundaries. Fly through the sand dunes here, come over the hill, just about half throttle right now, so nothing too aggressive. But once you get, the feeling of a car in a track and you generally know where you're going, it's so easy to just get consistent with the laps. And I'll probably do many moves throughout this video where maybe push the car off the track or something. But what I'm saying, I feel like it's easy to get into a groove. This car gets a little light there. Easy to get into a groove with this sim, more so than I've found with other sims. And I don't know if that means it's more realistic, but it's certainly very enjoyable to race. And I can't help but think it's maybe very realistic. We'll come out of the final corner, we'll get on the front straightaway. Should take maybe a couple laps on tires to get them warmed up. So I might do a couple practice laps here and then come back for a flyer. Straightaway. I've done a few laps, get tires up to temperature. We'll see what this lap is, but try to just put together a solid lap to get a gauge on this car. Come across the line, head down towards Tarzan, break it down, second gear, a little bit early on the brakes, roll it in, understeers quite a bit off the power, and then on the power, the back end wants to come around. Now come through some of the snaking sections here, and the classic long banked left-hander. Glad they kept this one in the modern version of the circuit. Oh, I touched the curb there on the outside. Run a little bit wide now, flat. So come over the hill here. Spectators up on the sand dunes. Just feather the throttle there over the top of the hill so the car doesn't spin out. Settle it in and get it straightened out for the back straightaway here. Hardly a straightaway, but it's a flat, fast section. Just a little bit of a lift there, and we'll come up towards the tunnel here in a second. This next corner, much tighter than you would think it would be, or at least based off the GPL version. Come around towards the end of the lap, then focus towards the hotel. Down to third gear. Get on that throttle for the final corner. Still some understeer, turns to oversteer. Alright, so okay lap, a little slow through the middle, but should give us a good sense of pace in the stripped down version of the car. Keep it in fourth to get across the line. 168, so it's a 121.016. All right, so that was a good baseline, and I think to start, I don't want to go too crazy too quickly. I want to do a few of these at least and see a little bit of progression, hopefully. But we'll go with front wing, and they do have some 60s style front wings, front wing high. There we go. There's also an air intake version of it as well. I can show that real quick. which just puts winglets down towards the front, like you would have seen in about 1970, or once they figured it out at the end of 1969. But we'll go with the high wing style. I always thought that was a cool look. Outrageous, of course. And for the rear wing, we'll do the same. There's actually two versions. So we got high 1, which got some struts coming off the roll bar and transfixed to the rear axle there. Then we have a high 2, which is all right against the engine. It's very Ferrari-like, I think. But we'll go with high, the first version there. For side pods, I think we'll keep it without side pods for now. I think that would just add weight, right? And if we're thinking about 60s F1 cars, late 60s, we wouldn't have had those yet. We got our front wings. We'll stick it with no airbox for now. Mirrors, we'll keep the same. There are a few mirror options, just in case you're curious. We'll stick with the same ones for now. And helmet, we'll keep it on the same. There is a modern style helmet as well, but we'll keep it on the old one for our old test driver here. All right, so we'll go out and see what these wings are like. So we're on one of the outlaps here, and you can see, obviously, these wings won't let you forget which ones you have selected. The huge plane wing in front will come into the final corner. Interested to see how this one does. In my limited testing now on lap 4 here, the car feels maybe a little bit more stuck. I think it is slower in a straight line, which would make sense, but I can't quite feel too much of a difference. So we'll come across the line. That was already quicker on that outlap, and I wasn't even pushing. So I guess we'll see here in just a second how much better the wings are. Throw it into Tarzan then, back on the throttle. Engine power comes on nice in this, no complaints there. Oh, a little bit of sliding there. So the car's not totally stuck to the ground. Put it into first and try to get it onto the back section of the track better than I did the last time. Of course, this is not a perfect test. There'll be some driving variances between the runs, but yeah, I can tell this is a little more planted at high speed especially, but at low speed here, doesn't feel much different, or low relative speed. Come onto the back straightaway up to 4th gear then. Should be able to go flat out. Rear end gets a little loose there. Just need to watch out for the curbs. Some of them might launch you, come through the tunnel. Big lift. All right, just a few more corners to go. Gut it up to the hotel. Down to 3rd. Pretty conservative line on the way in. I run a little bit wide on the way out, but now flat out towards the line. See what I can get for speed. I got 168 last time. 68. Okay, so just as fast. That was a 119.4. And that might just be a little more practice. I think that with lap driving-wise was better than the lap on the first one, but from a 121.068 without wings to these very early aerodynamic devices, literal wings, in a 119. All right, so over a 1.5 seconds is pretty good for just adding a couple bit of wings, and I think could have eked quite a lot more speed out of the wingless version, maybe tighten that up a bit, but this felt easier to drive, especially at a high speed, which makes sense. The top speed actually wasn't down, so we'll see what we can do now. So this was, roughly a 1969, 1968 F1 car now, so let's move on maybe a few years. We'll get rid of the front wings of this style. What are we going to go with now? So we do have Ferrari 68. Oh, interesting. So the little wing plates on the front. That certainly won't provide too much downforce. But all right, so if we look, and a lot of these quite far, but maybe a BRM P153. So that would be like a 1970, 71. I think that car ran for a few years. So we'll go with that front wing section. For side pods, you probably want to put some side pods on. We actually have a P160 side pod, so we're going to build a BRM P1 something car, but that looks pretty fitting for early 70s. Airbox wise, I don't think there would be an airbox still, or maybe something really minimal, neutral. There's a little box, so maybe we'll do something like that. Just to put a box over the air intake. Not sure that would do anything at all. And then for rear wing especially, need to do something quite a bit different. We'll do old style, small. Yeah, something like that. Like a Monza version of the car. these are I'm just kind of gawking at this car. I love this version of F1 car. It just looks like the right kind of car for me. But we'll take this out. So we got some newer wings. These should be much more efficient. They're smaller, but should be much more efficient with aero, and some side pods. Maybe adds a little bit of weight, so we'll have to watch how that feels. Airbox as well. But yeah, 1971-ish F1 car. Let's see how it does. So back out on the circuit, and the view has cleared up, thankfully the wing out of the way, but yeah, I think this car is going to be quite a bit quicker, at least through the testing laps here. It feels like it is. This is a slow lap, but we'll get on it onto the front straightaway. Try to use that rev range, probably pushing the engine a bit harder than I did on the other runs, but come across the line, see what this car can eke out. Down to the first corner, brake just a little bit before the 100 brake marker, roll it on in, still a little slow in the entry. Back on the throttle, trying to throw it in. Oh, back end gets loose still, so it's not like the last one, not totally stuck to the ground, but it feels like my mid-corner speed is higher. Get on to the sand dunes here. Up to fourth gear, flat through most of this. A little easier now. Ooh, a little lift there, down to third. Try not to slide the car too much through these corners. Missing the apex a little bit there, but now onto the back stretch. Come up to the tunnel turn. Oh, a little bit breath of the throttle, quite a bit quicker through there. Whole car almost spinning out of me as we'll come up the hill towards the hotel, down to third gear, skating side to side a bit, get it pointed the right way up on the throttle again, onto the front straightaway. I think this lap will be quicker, but it was a little messy. Come down towards the start finish line, looking at the speed there. Oh, and a 118.585, so another almost a whole second off of the 1969 version of the car. It didn't quite feel as controllable, honestly. I was a little bit all over the circuit, but clearly some speed in the car. Definitely feel like I'm pushing it a bit harder, but it's also a little easier to push harder. I found the first car with no wings to be quite hard to push, so some of that confidence factor as well. Maybe you can go a little bit quicker than I did without the wings, but it's a little easier to go faster, if that makes sense, with the wings on. All right, so I kind of love the version of the car like this, and I think I might save this one for my personal collection. If not for the aesthetics, I've gone quite a bit quicker. 118.5, so I mean it's a whole second, almost a second quicker than we were with the high wings, and well over 2 seconds now than the car with no wings. So we're getting quite quick, and boy, she looked good. But we're going to deviate from that a little bit and move on maybe a few years again. And we'll skip side pods for a second. For front wing, I might actually keep the side pods, but I feel like we should do more of like the Tyrrell bar. That might be a little too early. They closed up the front, basically got rid of the front opening. And once they figured out that that's where a lot of downforce could come from, that's a Tyrrell 5 and Tyrrell 7, so that's a little too far. All right, so we'll go with the Tyrrell 5, because that was a 1973 car, which should fit, I think, the next progression quite well. All right, so then we'll look at our rear wing, and they would have run something very similar to this, I guess, for that year, but maybe we can do a slightly different one. That's a slightly bigger wing, so we should have a little bit more downforce. I'm not expecting this car to be a whole lot quicker, but what I do want to add to this is the high-style air box. So if we look at this, yeah. So this looks a lot like yours, probably as close as we can get to the Tyrrell 005, which would have been the 1974 car for Tyrrell, Francois Sever, and Jackie Stewart. So this should be a good one. Won the World Championship, of course. Let's take a quick look at side pods. I don't think there's any real change we'd want to do here. It's a little too early for the wedge style side pods or anything like that. So we'll go back to, just for now, maybe one more round here with our more rounded side pods there. But yeah, I'm expecting this car to be marginally quicker, but maybe slower because of the big air box. I don't know. But certainly if the engine was at play, the cooling would help quite a bit, allow us to get more horsepower out of that Cosworth. rolling through the backside of the circuit. We can once again see the front wing a bit, but it's down low, of course. And the wing on the front of the Tyrrell 005 was so massive. A little loose there through the final corner. I think I've got a little bit more front downforce than I really would want, but we'll see what this car can do over the lap. Up through 4th gear. Up to 5th gear for just a second here, and we'll set our eyes on the boards to brake as late as I can. Down a 2nd. Oh, car almost breaks away from me on the brakes into Tarzan. Stab at the throttle a few times to get it through there. Now up the gears. Down a 2nd. Try not to miss the apex there. Do just a little bit. Keep it in 2nd for the ball corner. On the throttle, let it fade out wide now into the sand dunes once again. So the car feels a little bit more precise. It feels very pointy on the front. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be quicker, though. It's a lot less balanced. I feel like I'm babying the rear end, which makes sense. The wing, we didn't really upgrade too much on the rear. But fly it on through here. Really, the sense of speed is outrageous now. Come to the tunnel. Breath of the throttle. Probably could go even quicker through there. Now towards the hotels. Down to 3rd gear for the final corner. A little early on it, but try to get back on the throttle early. Oh, just dancing the car all the way to the outside of the track there. All right, we'll come to the line. Wasn't too bad of a lap overall. A little bit slow through the first part, but we'll see what kind of time it is. Come across the line, a 118.1, so another 4/10 or so up, even off the last car. So either getting better at driving, which I think is partly that, but also this one was harder to drive, I think. So we didn't quite make it easier, but F1 does that. Sometimes you have advancements that make the car easier to drive, and other times it's just going to make the car quicker, but you have to hold on with your life. So now we're up to about 3 seconds, or a little over 3 seconds quicker than the beginning. And that's definitely not all driving at this point. So I could say with a fact that I believe the wing changes and things definitely have an effect. I know it's something that ChiefWiggum wants to work on a bit more and add more physics and things, but it's a lot of fun like this. So I thought I'd do one more of these and maybe try to just make the car as quick as I think I can make it. We'll go all out with this. So instead of starting with the front, since we've given that a lot of attention, let's start with the back here in the rear wing. And I think we want to do, what's the M26? I mean, that's a huge wing. I think that's from the McLaren, right? It's such a big tray. You could deliver anything on that. Modern long. There we go. That's more, I mean, that looks to me like a late 70s wing. So we'll go with that maybe on the rear. Side pod wise, we do got some crazy stuff here we can do. I think this is a Ferrari related side pod configuration. I mean, obviously these would add some ground effect downforce if we go a few more years on, but based off what we do have here for side pods, what's the Lola at? Wedge shape. So these are a little bit more like late 70s, almost indie style type side pods, short round, M26. All right, so there's a McLaren style. I think these look probably the most advanced. Do we have some ground effects going on? Maybe. Tough to say. It looks like there might be some sort of channeling happening under there. So we'll go with those to see how fast that is. Front wing itself as well. We have so many options for this. This one here from March 721. But that would still be a little bit early on. BT45. So with the BT45 styles, that would be 76, which is getting quite far on, I think, for what this mod covers. No doubt I'm missing something that folks would say that's the one you want to go the quickest. But we do have the Ferrari 312, of course, which went well on into the late 70s. Such a different style. Even I think these would have been somewhat the same year, but we'll go with that BT45. We'll go big big all around. For our airbox then, we do have the BT45 style airbox, which adds more little inlets on the side, which conflict with the side pod. So not everything's in perfect order. Changing the front wing. Then we'll go back to our BT45. But overall, this all works quite well and very impressive for what what ChiefWiggum's able to do with this configurator, because this isn't really built to do stuff like this, but love to see it. All right, so I think I'll go with this M26 airbox just simply because I like how it looks, but I think that'll be a pretty good one. It's not so big that it's getting in the way, but we're still getting a little bit of air up there. So I'm looking at the front of this thing, and I've got two tiny little vents on the front wings, and no air is getting past that. So we do need a little bit of air intake, and we'll do that through the M26 style. Might as well at this point change some of the mirrors as well, and we'll go with the square ones nice and close to the cockpit. All right, and so this looks like, at least through my first glance through this mod, about as advanced a Formula One car as we can go right now. But let's see if this is any quicker than our 118.1 that we did effectively with a Tyrrell 005. Through the backside of the circuit here, and just the mirrors alone make this feel a bit more futuristic than what we've been driving. But will it be quicker? I'm not quite sure. It feels pretty quick, but time will tell here. We'll come out of the final corner, get up the gears towards the start-finish line, use all those revs, try to get as much speed out of this V8 as I can. Up to 5th gear, cross the line, spot the braking for T1 just before the 100 marker, down to 2nd gear. A little less dramatic this time, rolling around there. Now snake through, try not to go too late into this right-hander, very easy to do. There we go. Now around the bowl corner, try to accelerate out, just nip the dirt on the right side, but then up the gears. So we'll head through the sand dunes one last time. Up over the top of the hill. Whoa, almost flat out this time. Down to 3rd gear. A little bit of a bad line on the entry. It was a little tight, but then try to get the car off the exit. We'll snake around the backside of the circuit then. You can see how the cars were outgrowing these circuits almost faster than they could update them. This feels so scary fast. Ugh. Well, it wouldn't be 70s Formula One testing without some kind of massive accident. So we'll try this again. Down the front straightaway, up the gears, a little bit of oversteer coming off the corner as the car kicked on acceleration. Sliding there as well. Try not to slide the car too much, but get on that throttle for the back straightaway. So we're going to come up to where it all happened last time. Hopefully the car will stick this time, won't slide out wide. Through the right-hander now, up to the tunnel. Just to lift off the accelerator, slide it on through. There we go. Conquer your fears. So like I said, the cars outgrew the circuits, I think, very quickly, but luckily we have infinite resets, so we'll come to the line, try this one more time. Up to 5th gear, just max out those revs in 4th. Now come spot the braking for the first corner. Down the gears, down to 2nd. Ease it on into Tarzan, just wait on that accelerator. There we go. Not too bad of a first corner. Now come, try not to push wide for once. Slide it on through the right-hander, now into the ball corner. Very fast on the entry, sliding a bit wide, not really getting an apex, but keeping the speed up. Now accelerate into the sand dunes one last time. Come over the top of the hill flat, down to 3rd gear. Kind of a weird line through there, but accelerating now towards the tricky part once again. Flat out through the right-hander, just to dip off the accelerator, try not to get the car too upset. Almost nipped the grass on the left side. Come to the top of the hill, down to 3rd gear. There we go, floated on through, back on the accelerator, come towards the line. I don't know if this is going to be quicker than the 118.1. But we'll see. Coming towards the line now, flat out fourth gear. We'll just keep it there. 1:17.844, so it was quicker. My God. This car is so hard to drive. They definitely get harder to drive. If the couple of accidents there wasn't an indication, it's definitely not easier than the earlier cars, or at least I'm not as skilled at them, but it's faster. The downforce makes the cars a bit more unpredictable if you're getting sideways, but you can go so much faster. And so this, I think, shows how much of a progression aero really was throughout the 70s for Formula One. So what a fun mod and mod idea. I think there's more of this kind of thing coming out, but certainly in a great sim like rFactor2, I absolutely want more of this. So I hope ChiefWiggum continues on developing this. It seems like there's a few different projects going on. I've seen some previews for 60s and 80s Formula One cars in a similar style, but I think having this builder where you can kind of play around and tweak could only get better the more different parts and more different things that you could tweak could be. And I'm pretty convinced that things are progressing here. Certainly some of it's the driving style, and no doubt folks will tell me exactly what's different, but if you could expand it to do different engines and do different tires and maybe even different chassis and things and mix and match, I could imagine even having, I don't know, some kind of payment style where you run a league and people can only pay for certain parts, and I have no idea. It could be a lot of fun, but it certainly is a lot of fun, even in its current state, to experiment with for an evening or 2 or 3. Might be playing with this all week just to see what everything drives like and race against the AI around some of these tracks. So cool. I love this era of Formula One, and hopefully this helps show just a little bit how much evolution. I said it there a second ago at the end of my lap, but this all happened, really everything that we raced is a simulation of stuff that happened in a 10-year time span from 1967 with no wings all the way through 77 here right at the start, right before ground effects really started, and things got even crazier from there. But absolutely wild innovation, and so exciting to have been a motorsports fan, I think, back in these days, and seeing how much everything progresses every week. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this. Interested in other folks' thoughts, and hopefully ChiefWiggum continues on with it. But thank you for watching. I'll see you all again next time.